Hola, mi gente.
Hola.
Welcome back to another episode of the Corazon Chronicles podcast. So excited to have you here.
Super stoked. This is going to be an awesome episode today. And we're hopefully getting back into a full regimen. So,
Yes, thank you so much for all the support and the love. We really appreciate it. We love
Yeah.
the DMs, the emails. And if you don't know where or how to contact us, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Corazon Chronicles Pod. And I want to say on Twitter, it's Corazon Pod.
Yeah, head over there.
Send us a DM because we are always diving into the topics that you guys tell us about. We're going to dive into one today.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing, I think, more fun than just like putting our own twist and opinion on like what's going on in the world of love and relationships.
Yeah, 100%. You know, people definitely like to get advice, you know, not only from us, but from other people in the comments and stuff too. So it's kind of cool. I think I like this little segment that we have going with like answering at least one or two questions every episode. This is awesome.
I love it too. I feel like it's like when you get together with a bunch of friends and you're just like, you know, talking about the shit that's going on in your life.
Oh, girl, what do I do about this?
Girl, let me tell you what this man has been doing, right?
Oh.
But let's start off with a review. So again, if you have not left us a review yet, please go ahead and do that either on Apple or on Spotify. Those are the two platforms that I know that allow you to like leave a review.
Right.
So please do it because it helps us grow and expand and impact. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like the video on YouTube and stuff like that. If you guys are checking out the video, and if you guys are just listening to us and you want to watch the show, we are on YouTube and we are, starting to play around with some video. So
yeah. Okay, so this review is from Bren Gem, and the title is Strengthen Your Relationship. I'm only a couple episodes in, and I'm hooked. I love this approach and style as a podcast because it has me reflecting so much within myself and my marriage. This is asking all the questions that healthy relationships usually answer. I know this is going to help me strengthen my relationship for sure. Thanks, y'all, for this encouragement and entertainment.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
I love it. Thank you so much for your review. And if you want us to read your review on the show, please make sure to leave one.
Great. There you go. If not, she will come for you. You can tell she's a little.
I will stalk. Okay, so we're going to dive into a couple different topics today. The first one is a listener question that came in through the DMs on Instagram. Again, you can find us at Corazon Chronicles Pod.
This is a good one.
Okay. And it's not something that I've personally had to confront because I'm little. I am 5'2", y'all. So even though on the socials I might look 6 feet tall because everybody looks 6 feet tall, he's actually 6'2". I'm 5'2". Okay. So this listener question was around dating man that is shorter than you. And how should you handle it, especially if like people are talking shit about it?
I mean, I guess I would wonder what kind of shit they would talk, because I've seen some shorter men with some taller women before too, and I don't really see it as like a knock on her. I always it always hits me subconsciously as like, okay, she obviously loves him for him. That's kind of what I see in that. Or if I see somebody like really pretty with someone who's like maybe not in the best shape or something, there's something else there, right? So
I think, if we take a look at biologically, like why this would present itself as a potential issue.
Doesn't feel right.
Like, if you think about it, the biggest, the strongest of any species is typically going to be like the alpha of a group, right? And that's going to be who people or whatever that species wants to procreate with, right? You're going to seek out like the best specimen, whatever. And I think there's this perception that like a shorter man is somehow like less manly.
Right.
And I think that's probably why like societally it's a little weird.
Did she say in her comment at all of like what she was feeling, or was she just like wanting to get a third person's perspective on it?
So let me see if I can pull up the screenshot.
Yeah, so I while you do that, I would say that me being 6'2", I've never really been attracted to women that are taller than me, just because they're
very few and far between.
Yeah,
probably.
It is. Right. And I don't I've just never really been around any that are that much taller than me. My sister is actually, I think she's got to be maybe 6'1" or 6'2", but she's like very well proportioned and stuff, so sometimes the super tall girls are like, the proportions start to get a little out of whack. And I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm just saying sometimes I'm guilty of it. I'm like 3/4 legs, and then I just have like this small torso. So. But I think that if she I think that if she loves him for who he is, and if it doesn't, if it doesn't bother her, then I don't think that she should pay any attention to it, But if she has
Yeah.
friends like talking shit to her, like, what's it like kissing down to your man? Like, that's kind of
I think that's what it was. It
like
was
Lord
more
Farquaad.
about like, how do you, like, what do you say to defend it? Like, do you even have to?
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like the people that are saying that are just like, yeah,
Assholes.
haters in a sense, But my ex, she the guy that she was with for a super long time, he was a couple inches shorter than her, and she would crack jokes about it, about how it felt awkward to like hug down, and she said it felt like she was hugging her mom and stuff. So that's kind of.
Okay.
I think if I was super short, I would just get super jacked. I would compensate it by, if I can't go this way, I'll just go this way. I'll just be like
Yeah.
super jacked. At least I have muscles and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, you
So
can't be
funny.
obsessed about like what other people have to say about your partner
Yeah.
either, It's like, if that matters to you so much, that I think there's a greater insecurity that you need to address within yourself, because it doesn't matter how tall, short, skinny, fat, whatever the person is. Like, if that's your person, that's your person. You really don't need to fucking explain that to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you can use us as a good example. I mean, there's an 8 year or 7 year age difference between us, and if we were worried about the stigma or whatever that meant to society or whatever the case is, then it would be harder to have the bond that we have. And I think you struggled with that a little bit at the beginning, and I think that I had to reassure you a little bit and let you know, like,
Yeah.
hey, my ex was older as well. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything or settling in any way. And I think that giving you that reassurance was nice. And
Yeah.
maybe the lady that left the comment should have a conversation with her husband and be like, hey, I'm kind of getting bothered by this, and
Yeah.
maybe he can give you some reassurance to be like, fuck those people.
Yeah,
I don't
honestly,
know.
it's like,
you know
in this day and age, I think it's a lot more common for people to just kind of buck the status quo, and for relationships to look a lot less like conventional as they have in the past, and whether
Mhm.
that's an age difference or a height difference or a body size difference, like, at the end of the day, it's you and the other person that has to be comfortable with the situation. Like, I know we've talked about the age gap, and I had a lot of insecurities about it,
Yeah, you
right?
did. Yeah.
Because I'm just like, it means something way different in society for an older woman to be with a younger man than it
Mhm.
is for an older man to be with a younger woman. Like, that's hella common.
Right.
Whereas, the whole cougar narrative and the cradle robbing, like, that shit's fucking gross. It's
Cradle robbing,
toxic.
huh?
Yeah, it's nasty. It's
Cradle
like,
robbing means that, like, I'm giving up my opportunity to have kids. Is that what that
no,
means?
it's like, you're snatching a baby out of the cradle because he's
Oh,
fucking younger than
Jesus.
you. It's like gross. Like, it's giving
I mean, if I
pedophile.
was if I was 21, maybe.
Yeah, well, it didn't help when you
Uh,
were like, oh, when like you were 18, I was 11. I'm like, I don't fucking
hey,
need
that
that
was.
shit in my head, okay? Toxic.
I forget why I brought that
I
up. I
don't
don't
know,
know.
but never do it
I
again,
think
please.
it came down to like what year you graduated, because you graduated in '03 and then I graduated in 2010. So I was like, that's when I started doing the numbers, and I was like, hey, you know what's kind of crazy?
You know what, though? This skin is giving 32 years old, okay? So,
Hey,
ladies, if you want to date younger men, just take care of your skin.
hey, you put in a lot of work too in the gym. You
I
eat right,
do.
so
I've been
she
keeping
does a
this
lot
shit
of self care.
snatched, okay? Keep it snatched, and you can snatch up anybody you want. Anyway.
So about the shorter thing, what are your thoughts on the TLC show, The Little People Big World, where, like, I think one of the guys, one of the husbands on there, I think his wife is like act like regular size,
Okay.
and they have kids, and the kids that they've had, they came out, with the dwarfism thing.
Yeah.
So like, that's like, and I feel like people don't really. I mean, I don't really know. I don't really hear any whispers about that, but
Yeah.
I could imagine if I went on to like the comments and stuff, then you would be able to see what people are saying about, like, why is she with them or something like that. I don't
You
know.
just never know who's gonna click. I
Love
think
is
that's one
love,
thing,
right?
right? Like,
Shit, love is
you're
love.
gonna find your person, and it might not even be who the hell you thought it was gonna be, right? I think a lot of us have these like prescribed checklists of like what we think our ideal partner is gonna be.
Right.
And sometimes that shit just gets blown out of the water when you actually find somebody who's maybe not aligned with that list. Like, I could have never imagined dating somebody younger. That was never on my like list.
What about somebody taller?
I don't know why, but I've never like been hyper focused on height because I've always just like everybody's taller than me. So
Your
like
exes have been like mainly shorter guys.
yeah, because Latino men who are like, you know, purebred versus you, which you're like a hybrid.
My abuelo is 6'3". Thank you.
See, that's rare though.
He's thoroughbred.
Latino men though are not typically known to be tall.
Okay.
So
I
like
respect
I
that.
think my tallest ex was like 5'8".
Mm.
So you know, height's never been a huge thing for me, but let me tell you, I'm never going back. What they say about tall men. It's true.
Oh my. I don't know what she's doing with this part of the segment. But jeez. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, babe.
I think Jay Wheeler's pretty tall now.
I think he's like the same height as you.
Yeah. That's why I'm like super skinny. They can see in the video. Like, I mean, obviously I don't work out or anything. You know, I'm known to like go through my spurts where I'll do like push-ups and sit-ups for a couple months or something. But as far as like, I mean, I'm 6'2", 180 pounds. It's doesn't really fluctuate more than that. I can't. I mean, if I could go on a bender of like eating, I just can't put on the weight. You would tell me when we first got together,
yeah,
babe, you're like skinny as fuck. You need to eat. And I'm like, well, I try. I do.
Yeah. You have just way more surface area to fill out, so it's fine. But okay. I think, you know, to our listener, fuck everybody else. Like, that's none of their damn business. How tall your partner is. If you love them for who they are, then that's what matters.
Yeah. And like I said, have a conversation with your partner about it if it's really bothering you and if it's something that, because you don't want it to just fester. You know, because if it's festering and then it will kind of take over a little bit. And then next thing you know, you might start to see other things that you don't like about your partner and stuff like that. And I feel like that whole situation is toxic. And so I just say keep the communication open 100%.
Yeah.
Even if it feels like it's something small and petty, it might be feeling like, you know, it's embarrassing to bring up, but it's much better to just get that shit out in the open. So
absolutely. And again, if you want us to answer your question live on the show, go ahead and send us an email at corazonchroniclespodcast@gmail.com or send us a DM on Twitter or Instagram. Brr. Okay, so we're going to hop on over to Reddit. Okay, Reddit is a place where there's lots of very interesting conversations going on.
Hell yeah.
And there is a thread called, Am I the Asshole? So you already know. Anybody who asks a question in this thread, it's like, obviously there was some conflict that came up around some relationship and they want your opinion on what's going on here.
I'm excited for this because this is my first time hearing this as well too, folks. So here we go.
Yeah. Okay, so the title of this is, Am I the Asshole for Calling My Girlfriend Overdramatic? My 27-year-old girlfriend and I went to the beach last week with our friends. It was awesome, tons of fun. When we got back home, I was showing her pictures that I took. She comes to one in particular, and in this one, my girlfriend and 5 other girls have their back to me and are looking out at the water from this massive boat.
Oh.
Okay, so it's the booty shot.
Yeah, booty shot.
Right? She fixated on her looking chubbier than her friends. More specifically, her butt looking bigger than her friends in her jean shorts. This led her to spend the next 10 minutes looking at herself in the full-length mirror, declaring herself fat. Ooh. I told her all of this talk was ridiculous and that she was being overdramatic. She flips out, grabs my phone, tells me to open my eyes and see that every other girl looks small in their shorts except her. She says my calling her overdramatic is my way of invalidating her. I told her, actually, I'm trying to get her to be kinder to herself, and she told me to keep my further comments to myself. Am I the asshole?
Man, that's it seems like he had the right intention, but the execution was just not there. You're right. And I don't know how long they've been together or anything. I guess he's still trying to figure her out, but his intentions were pure. He was just trying to let her know, like, babe, you're beautiful. I don't, you know, there's no need to think that way. But he did go about it the wrong way. So what did he do wrong? I think that he should have just kind of, man, it's tough.
How would you handle it?
I think that I would just reiterate that you were beautiful in my eyes, right? And it wasn't like a thing of like, oh, I'm accepting you for whatever. Be like, but you're genuinely are. And I would point out the things like, you know, that you work out and you do take care of yourself and stuff like that. And then also, why is it a bad thing to have a fatter ass than your friends? Like, I don't know. I love that part for him. So like, I would tell her that. I'd be like, out of all those girls on the boat, I mean, I think that everybody's gonna be looking at the thick girl because that's just how it goes, you know, especially with the booty shot. So I just think that he could have gone about it, you know, a little bit better, give her some compliments, kind of reiterate give her some words of affirmation, and then also hear her out for why she does feel that way, because even the compliments and stuff like that, she's gonna kind of gloss over those because she feels the way that she feels. So maybe he could have opened up a conversation with her on why she does feel that way. Maybe something happened in the past. Maybe she has friends that low-key talk shit about fat people, and she feels like they're kind of being passive aggressive when they do that. There's a lot of things that could be feeding that energy for her. So, and then for him to say, oh, you're just over dramatic and you're just doing too much, it did kind of take away why she feels the way that she feels, because it's how she feels no matter what, so you got to be very cautious and weary of that, and you have to take that into account, because her feelings do matter regardless if you feel like they're unworthy or not. She's still feeling that. So
I really like that you mentioned the fact that he needs to do a better job of kind of figuring out the underlying root of something.
Yeah.
Because, she's projecting some shit that probably has absolutely nothing to do with him.
Right.
But he's taking it personal because he, quote unquote, was trying to say something nice or give her a compliment. And she's just like, well, I don't really give a fuck about your compliment right now because this is how I feel about it. That's just like straight up, doing the work of understanding your partner's triggers and traumas,
Right.
which sounds like they still need to navigate. But I also do think that it's her responsibility to, like, if she's triggered by what, her looks or whatever, like, girl, you also need to be like doing the work there too. Cause that's not your partner's job to solve for you. Your partner's job is not to be your self-esteem. That's your job.
Right.
And then, you can have a partner that boosts your self-esteem or that fucks with your self-esteem, depending on who you're with. But that self-love has to be cultivated from within, because it doesn't matter what anybody says to you compliment wise. If, like, you don't believe it because you just inherently don't have a good self-esteem, it's not going to matter what your partner's going to say to you. Right. So I think she's got to do some inner work to figure out where that shit's coming from. But I do think that him calling her overdramatic was definitely like an invalidation of her feelings. He could have thought that to himself.
Yeah.
I just think, like, sometimes some things just don't need to be said out loud.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like maybe they haven't been together for the longest time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're 27 or whatever.
27 and 25.
So, they're still figuring out how to navigate people in general. I've had to, I had my business for 5 years and stuff. And I was able to, I dealt with a lot of people with, as far as customers and, employees, everything else. And then, having other jobs and stuff, you kind of being around people and stuff like that, you learn how to kind of navigate people's energy. And sometimes you can figure out people's triggers. And I just think that, I mean, it's not like he called her fat, but I mean, it like he
didn't help.
No, it's like, so he should have just gave her some words of affirmation and really just tried to find out the root with her, and not really a therapy session, but just be like, babe, why are we feeling this way?
I'm curious, at what point do you kind of, are you okay or allowed to get frustrated because a person just keeps, like, having the same issue and is not working on it, right?
What would be the issue?
So, like, let's say she just has a fundamental lack of self-esteem about her body, right? But it's not something that comes up once. It's something that comes up all the time. Like, you're trying to get intimate, she's like, oh my God, no, I'm fat. Or you go out to dinner, she's like, no, I can't eat that, I'm fat. Like, everything revolves around that. Like, at what point do you have to be like giving an ultimatum, like, fix this shit?
Good segue here. I see what you did there.
You know what I mean? Because, like, at some point it's kind of like, bro, you're exhausting. Like, if this is such a fucking problem for you and it keeps being an issue, like, at what point are you going to take accountability to fix this?
Yeah. So the ultimatum, right? Giving somebody an ultimatum, it really, I think it comes down to the circumstances of the ultimatum. But something like that for someone who is, complaining about something or going through something, but not doing the self work or trying to put in some type of effort to figure out and come up with a solution, I could understand why that would be frustrating, especially being the person's partner, and seeing them go through this and seeing them on that roller coaster of emotions, and then giving them suggestions and stuff, and then they're not taking it. I could see that being very frustrating. But I think an ultimatum wouldn't be good in that situation. I just think that it would be a tough conversation to have, but I think that eventually you come to the point where you're like, I love you and I respect your feelings, but we've been talking about this so much, and it's just a constant circle that every time we go through this, it's just a circle that I just don't want to continue in that with you. So if you're going to deal with this, I'm going to respectfully ask that you deal with this on your own, because I've done everything I can do to help you and listen to you, and now it's just being so repetitive, and I just see you in this cycle of toxicity that I want that away from me, but I don't want to be away from you. And I think eventually that might, because they're just sharing it with you, and it's like you're enabling them to keep visiting those feelings all the time, because it's like people that are addicted to drama. They want to gossip and they want to keep talking about the same stuff. And so, but on the other hand, an ultimatum would be very useful in a situation like with your friend that we talked about in the last episode, right? So this guy's not, traveling, not putting in the effort, and the effort is 10-1. The ratio on her side to his side is 10-1, and she's just asking for it to come up a few points, right? So I believe that she gave the ultimatum like, hey, you need to show me some effort. You need to travel here, come visit me like I've done several times for you, and come talk to me. Let's hash this out. And like, if you really want to be with me, I need to see the effort, and I think that is completely reasonable. I think that's very like a mature thing to do, and I think that she's actually doing more than she needs to by giving this man yet another chance, and there's no judgment
women, though.
in that.
That's how we roll. We give 17,000 chances before we're actually done.
Yeah, and there's no judgment in that at all. It's her story and her love, and I definitely want it to work out, and I respect it so much, the fact that she's willing to do this. But I do really appreciate the fact that she's trying again, but for her this time
with conditions and boundaries.
No, if I'm opening the door one more time for you, but you need to come to me. I'm not going to open the door back to you after you do me dirty and then come travel to you and then work around everything you got going on. Like, that's catering stuff is going to be put on the back burner until I see you willing to cater to me a little bit. And this man owes her some catering. I'm not kidding. This man, and girl, you know who you are. This man owes you, he owes you a month in the condo. He just needs to just like, come on, so shouts out to you.
Ultimatums for me are very problematic, and so
it can get toxic.
I'm thinking of the Netflix show The Ultimatum, which, if you haven't watched the show, the whole fucking concept is so incredibly toxic, right? Okay, so it's couples where one person wants to get married and the other one's like on the fence or whatever.
She's triggered, folks. She's very triggered.
Okay, first of all, the fact that they go on the show and they give each other permission to basically date other people for 3 weeks, aka cheat on each other.
They've been together for a while.
They've been together for a while. One person wants to get married, the other person doesn't. And it's the person who wants to get married is like, bitch, we need to get married or it's over. But before we do that, we're going to go and date other people to make sure that you're my person. And then we'll come back together after 3 weeks when I'm fucking around.
Basically test our love.
Yeah. And then let's see if we still want to be together or if we found a new partner in this circle of people that get selected for the show.
With other couples that are also in the ultimatum. So you got one person in each couple that is there to put their lover through the test because they want to get married. And then the other person in the couple and all the other couples is just there because they don't really want to get married, but they still like the person they're with.
Yeah.
And then they're like, damn, I'm going to go on the show and go date these other people. This is insane.
Yeah.
And it gets very sticky.
I could never, first of all, like, shout out to anybody who's ever been on the show or thought about being on the show. Like, you're better than me because I could not. Okay. It's permission to cheat.
Yeah.
I'm like, how are we going to come back into bed and act like shit's normal?
I don't know if they're actually having sex on the show.
No, they are.
Oh, really?
Not everybody is, but some people are.
Really? They have like an area where they can go? They can like spend the night together?
They like move in with other people.
Oh, I thought that they were just like in like a real world house and like
no,
like a Jersey
Shore. They move
house.
in with. They pick a different person to have this 3-week experiment with.
Oh, okay.
And form a bond and connection, and then come back. It's crazy.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I feel like the whole ultimatum thing is very problematic, especially when you're talking about like a scenario where you're asking somebody to marry you or else.
What does, well, I guess, all right, go ahead. Cause I've actually kind of been in this ultimatum thing. So.
Oh, okay. So I'm very curious to hear that. So I feel like, especially for women, we're very guilty of being on fucking timelines because society programs us to believe that like, if you're with somebody for X amount of time, you have to get engaged and then you got to move in and then you got to get married and then you got to have a baby and then you got to buy a house. Like, right. There's all this pressure to like check off all this shit that quote unquote makes you like a functional adult.
Yeah.
And I think it puts unnecessary strain on relationships because there is this pressure to always be like doing, achieving, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think in a relationship, like you should prescribe, you should be trying to live out some artificial fucking checklist.
Right.
You know, like some people don't give a shit about getting married, but they're committed.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the point? Why do we need to do all this extra, spend money on a wedding? I don't even want the wedding, spend $10,000 on a ring. Like for what?
Right.
To put on an external show because that's what makes our relationship legitimate. Right. Like, so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure from that perspective, but then that's the biggest decision you can make in your life is like
Agreed.
being with somebody forever. Like it shouldn't be because okay, we're together 7 years. If you've had 7 dysfunctional fucking years, should you be getting married just because you put in the time? Probably not. You got to work on some shit, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like, it shouldn't be about this external shit. It should be like, is this actually something that both of us want to do and for the right reasons?
Right. Yeah, I was actually in that exact same scenario with the first girl I dated for, I think, like 6 years or so, from like 20 to 27, 21 to 27. That was the era where I had my business and stuff. So we were together through the timeline, right? We moved in together. I started the business. The business ended up kind of doing well. And once I started getting financially secure, we were 3-4 years into the relationship. And then one day I was actually getting questions and comments a little bit from my family on my Spanish side, was just like, because they know I had the business and everything, and they were just like, well, how are you guys doing? Like, what are you guys going to do or whatever? And I'm like, well, I've never really thought about getting married. She was good or whatever, but I just wasn't thinking about that. That was all going to come later, as we've talked about before. And so one day, we had moved into this new place, and we had more room than we knew what to do with as far as like the house and stuff. And she was just like, I kind of want to get married. And I'm like, you want to get married? And she's like, yeah. I think that we've been together for like 4 years or something. I would like at least to get engaged or something like that. And I was like, well, all right, but I'm not going to say like yes, and then like you're going to be expecting it. I'm like, well, I'm glad that you like let me know, but I don't know if I'm ready for that right now. And then she was kind of hurt, because she thought that meant like there was a lack of commitment or a lack of faith in the relationship. And then she started to think that I was going to get to the money and then leave, and like all this stuff. So a little bit of time passed. I tried to bring her into the business to show her that I was like committed to have her be a part of it. And I was like, if anything didn't work out, I'm willing to split this whole shit with you, like, cause you were with me. So anyways, long story short, she comes to me a few months later and she was like, I want to have a baby. She's like, if we're not going to get married, I at least want to have a baby. And I was like, well, I want to make more money first. And she's like, well, you're making good money, and she's like, I don't really have to work and I could take care of the baby, da, da, da. And that was like, that one for me, I was just like, no, I'd much rather get engaged before we have a child, and then that was like kind of like the breakdown of everything. Like, cause then, she was ready. She was having baby fever real bad. And I just wasn't ready for it. I actually even contemplated it a little bit just because it was something she wanted. And I was like, well, maybe, it's like, but that was not a right reason to bring a child into the
Hell
world.
no.
Like, that's not like some reward that you give her because she's been loyal to me. Like, and that's where I was going with it in my head. Like, I was like, well, this woman wants this, like, gosh, I might as well do it, and I'm glad I didn't do it. So
Yeah. I mean, that's rough, right? Like, because
Ultimatum is just like what broke the whole thing down,
you're
because like I was
staring at a future that you don't necessarily envision for yourself. And it's like, when you start doing things not because you want to do them, but because you think you need to do them to keep somebody around,
do it for the other person. Something like that is crazy, because like I said, I'd much rather get engaged and then even married versus bring like a life into the world.
That's just permanent. You can't undo the baby. You can undo the marriage.
That means I'd have like an 8-year-old right now.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you imagine?
No, I cannot. Yeah. So when it's like that type of thing where your hands being forced to do something just to keep that other person happy, I think that's toxic. Never. But I do think that there might be scenarios where an ultimatum is warranted. One example would be like when somebody's doing something that can literally like cause them physical harm.
Okay.
Right?
Drinking too much.
drinking, drugs, maybe gambling,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
anything that's like can legit like ruin your life, right? If it goes too far.
Yeah.
I think at that point, it might be a scenario where an ultimatum is an appropriate response after you've tried to have interventions and get them into therapy and do the work together. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
but at some point, it's like, if I've done all of these things and this person still has not made the change that they need to just make this like a healthy, functional relationship, then I think an ultimatum probably makes sense, where you're just like, look, you either going to stop this shit or I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
out.
you got to get out of that toxicity for yourself, and like it goes back into that last episode was, your time is your time, and how you choose to spend your time is how you choose to do that. So
Yeah.
you got to look out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, proceed with caution, I think, when it comes to ultimatums, because they can be sort of a manipulation tool that I don't think is healthy, but I think it can also be a self-preservation tool depending on the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up, racing dirt bikes and buying and flipping trucks and all this stuff, and I ran into several guys that I've bought trucks from and boats and stuff like that, and these guys are like, the wife says I gotta stop like building these Jeeps, like so I have to sell like a couple of these Jeeps, so I'm just like letting this shit go because like, and I know
That's not fair.
I know, but I mean, if the guy is fucking up the family finances because he keeps coming home with random Jeeps, you're
That's
like, you
fair.
just
Yeah.
spent another $5,000 on this Jeep. Why? You have 4 in the yard already.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. If you're doing too much of anything, then maybe it's time to have a conversation.
Wait, didn't your dad have like a truck or something, and your mom was like, you got to get rid of it or
Oh
something?
my God.
Wasn't
So
that an ultimatum?
my father literally swears, like, he watches all these like, fixer upper shows, the car shows and all that shit.
Gas Monkey Garage.
Yeah, all the things. And he swore he was gonna like rebuild this like 1990 like Chevy truck, blah blah blah.
Hell yeah.
Had that shit in the fucking driveway for like 3 years. He would work in a little bit, then it would have another problem he'd discover, and it just became like a money pit. And my mom told him one day, she's like, I'm gonna need you to get rid of that shit. Like, this, we're done with this project. You're never home. You're traveling all the time anyway. I don't even know why you thought that this was like a realistic possibility.
Dang.
And so, he ended up getting rid of it. But it's just funny, like, those types of ultimatums, I think that's fine.
Long story short, folks, there's all kinds of different scenarios for ultimatums.
Yeah.
So just be very cautious of how you go about it.
Yeah, just don't get married or have a baby because somebody else is telling you that that's what you need to do in order to save your relationship, because clearly there's other shit there that is trying to be masked by trying to force somebody's hand into that,
Yeah, and bringing life into the world is a very special thing. You are bringing a grown-ass adult into the world.
Yep.
You have to think about that. So we've all ran into some super fucked up people, and and it might not even be their fault. I've got a couple of cousins in the family that they just weren't wanted. They just weren't wanted. They were always treated like that by their parents, bounced around between each parent, always got in trouble and stuff. And the parents just acted like they were always it was just a mistake. You could just tell that it was like a one night stand scenario thing. She didn't mean to get pregnant, but didn't want to get an abortion. And then all of a sudden you have these kids, and then, the kids are acting up all the time. So anyways,
and the relationship's probably
sucks.
dysfunctional,
I hate to
right?
see that. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. That's something that I've always felt I needed to be the most intentional with, is just like the decision to procreate, have a child, because it's like y'all are tied forever.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
Can't undo it. And let's say you have a baby with somebody who's just not a good person.
Right.
You're
and
fucked.
then you have like the other side where like you see a lot of these co-parenting situations and stuff. Like, I mean, geez, like let's look at Nick Cannon. This guy can like this guy can go to dinner with like all 9 of his baby mamas. It's crazy, and everybody gets along. They're like, "Hey, girl, what's up?" And all the sisters and brothers are all taken care of. It's crazy, but that's like I mean, I know that that's just like a thing, but that happens out here all the time. I had some buddies growing up, and their parents were super cool. Like, they would all go to birthdays together, and they were remarried, and everybody was like playing cards together.
Yeah.
It wasn't really awkward, It was just kind of like, it was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally respect when people realize that they are bad partners but can be good parents.
Yeah, really good parents. Yeah.
I hate the scenarios where like folks are using the child as a pawn to like hurt each other, because the only person who's actually going to be hurt by that is the child.
Yeah,
right. Like, who wants that dysfunction as like your example of what love looks like?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I went through that a little bit with the split and stuff like that, and there was a little bit of like competition feeling between, like, if I would, when I would come down to to Florida, I would get a lot of stuff, and then when I would go back, and sometimes my stepmom would throw some of the stuff away, and then my dad would try to compensate. It was a weird little dynamic, yeah, for sure.
I also have never wanted to be like a single mom, so I think part of my anxiety around like having a child is like, yo, you got to be like 150% committed. I cannot question your commitment because I refuse.
Yeah,
I'm not doing it.
I mean, if that was ever to happen, you could just have one of your girlfriends move in with you, and I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding.
I just can't. I'm like, I want the white picket fence life when it comes to parenthood. Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Is that too aspirational?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
No, we're working on it. We're getting there. we're building the life together.
I'm here for it.
I actually wanted to bring up something that we went through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was not yesterday, the day before.
Yeah.
Right. We had a little conversation about a topic.
Okay.
And it's been a topic that we've had.
A recurring theme?
Yeah, a little bit. And I guess we won't get into the details just because it is personal. But at the end of the day, the point of the story is that I triggered her with something that I was doing, and something that I've always done, and just been part of like my lifestyle or whatever. And nothing like intentional or whatever, but I think that she's been around certain situations that involve that, where it was like kind of traumatic. And so this time she just kind of just started to shut down a little bit and was like, well, the energy was just way off, and she was upset and kind of defensive a little bit. And like I said, you were just shutting down a little bit, kind of retreating. And so it was like right when I got home too, but before I did anything else, I went into the bedroom and I sat down and I was like, let's talk about this. I was like, talk to me. Let me know. I'm like, I want to know why you're feeling this way. What's the triggers and what's happening, and what I have to do with that and what I can do to better that. And I think after we had this long conversation, everything was good, right?
Yeah.
It was like a very healthy way. And you were just like, your whole day changed after that. You were enjoying yourself. We went and laid in the pool together, and then like we had a awesome romantic night together, and we were just like, babe, like that was a milestone in our relationship.
I mean,
open communication.
This relationship has absolutely been like it's a teaching experience for me about like what healthy conflict looks like
and healing.
It's been so incredible to just experience what that feels like, because I did not see examples of healthy conflict growing up in my household. Like it was two options. It's either yelling and screaming or sweeping shit under the rug. And so I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. Like, it's just not in my nature. I don't like it. So I'm not that person, but I definitely am good at sweeping shit under the rug and like shutting down and compartmentalizing and just shove it down.
Right.
It's not that it's not going to bother me, and it's not that it's not going to come up, but it's going to come up after shit builds up.
Right.
And so you've been so proactive about like not letting me be that person. And you are very perceptive of like energy changes in me. You just can tell by looking at me like, there's some shit wrong here. We got to talk.
Right.
And you force me, not in a, like an aggressive way, but like you force me in a like, babe, this is a safe space. Yeah. Talk to me. This needs to be resolved. We're not going to be this couple that just like let shit builds and resentment happens. And then, because that's the recipe for fucking disaster.
I mean, I brought it up earlier, and I'm speaking from experience. That's why I try to curate that safe environment.
Yeah. So how did you learn how to do that? Like, because that's not a skill, I think, that we typically associate with relationships in general. Like, I always say like
general,
we are not taught about very fundamentally important things in life, right? I talk about money on my other show, Yo Quiero Dinero podcast, and that's something we don't learn about, right? We also don't learn about how to have healthy relationships. Like, there's no class in school that's like, hey, conflict resolution 101. Right? So like, where did you learn that?
I think it's just always been in my nature. My dad and I, we were always really close, and he was really good about having open communication, but man, you had to be very selective on like what you were open with him about, because he would get triggered about some stuff, and like he would get a little aggressive, and like he just couldn't really handle it. He's gotten a lot better now that he's older, but my dad was 19. He's 19 years older than me, so when he was 30, I was 10, you know?
Right.
So he was just like learning how to be an adult too. But he's the one who started it in me about the idea of open communication and talking about your feelings and stuff like that. And then I had some really close friendships. My friends and I, we were really good, really close buddies. And so we would always talk about stuff and whatever. I was never afraid to like cry with one of my friends or, you know, and then I was really big into church growing up. So that was kind of good. You know, we would go into like prayer groups and, you know, so the communication would kind of go through there. And
You're
then,
also a Virgo, which
yeah, the
is a sign
Virgos,
that's
the strong energy with that.
very, very known for like emotionally intelligent and like communicative.
Okay. Yeah. So and then, you know, throughout, even things like looking at, you know, my friend's mom's relationships and, just all kinds of different examples, movies, TV shows, stuff like that. I would always just pick up on certain things, that I really liked about like rom-coms and stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
would see the emotional guy and like the romantic guy and like what they would do and kind of, you know, how they would confess their love and just like fearless with their woman as far as like with their emotion. And I think that that's always been something I've craved, is just being like utterly comfortable and completely fearless with like, I feel like I can say anything and talk about anything without any type of real judgment, or with, there might be judgment, but at least you're going to, you know, give me
Hear
the
me out.
opportunity to explain why the hell I'm talking like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it just overall who I am. And then, you know, now that I've gone through therapy and stuff like that, and I know how to communicate really with myself, that's what's really unlocked it for me being able to deal with other people and stuff, you know, because now I know when I hear people talk about certain things with me and stuff like that, and they start to trigger me, I kind of, it kind of feeds into why they're talking about that, you know, and I really dive into their shoes and like, why are they thinking this way? Why are
Mm-hmm.
they feeling this way? You know, what could have happened? Stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's like, when you do that with people, you are just so open and like non-judgmental. Like my mind is so much more clear. I used to come up with stories about people, like, you know, I'd look at them and just judge them real quick, and it would just happen in a blink of an eye. But I would put a story to this person, and then now I walk around Publix or something, and now I wonder about like, where'd this person grow up or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know. It's just different. My
Yeah.
mind is just a lot more open now that I'm a lot more mature, and I've got a
Yeah.
long way to go. I'm 30, so.
Yeah, I think it's something you have to practice, right? Like I think
Hmm.
communication and healthy conflict is not something that's inherent, and it's not something that like you read one book
Hmm.
and you're a fucking expert.
Yeah,
You
I haven't
know?
read any books about anything. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I say, for the people who are single, who are like on that healing journey of like getting over a breakup or whatever, there's a lot of self work you can do, but something like conflict, like healthy conflict, you have to be in partnership to practice that.
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to give yourself the ability to like get back out there, start interacting with other people, start dating, because that's the only way you're actually going to get good at identifying what healthy conflict looks like, because you're going to have that experience of interacting with people, but you're also going to get the practice that you need to. Because you've helped me so much, like in such a short amount of time. Like I don't recognize myself sometimes and like how I used to handle shit versus like how I handle things now.
Oh, I love that for you, baby.
I love that for me too.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that, another big thing that I would say for people is the one thing that helped me the most was when I was in therapy. I was taught how to, identify the emotions I was feeling, because like
Mm,
you could be feeling, there's like, let's just say 5 emotions: happiness, sadness, whatever, and then like there's a lot of branches, olive branches to each of those feelings. So instead of just being like, oh, this makes me feel down, so that must mean it's making me feel sad or something. You can go more into it. It's kind of hard to explain, but once I was able to identify my emotions a lot more and be a lot more clear about that, then I was also able to do that with other people and see that, sometimes people jump into being angry because they're scared
yeah.
and they're on the defense and they don't know. So all they do is like raise their voice and puff out their chest and act like they want to fight. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and if you can see past that and be like, you're just fragile right now. You're afraid of like being broken, you know? So let's talk about that.
Hmm.
So I think identifying your own emotions is huge for your own personal journey.
Yeah, that is so true. Like I've become so aware of like my triggers,
Yeah, yeah.
and I try not to judge them too, but I also know it's my responsibility to not continuously project them on you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's okay if like you trigger me, but then I have to go back and be like, okay, is this actually about him?
Yeah.
Is he actually being malicious about his intent? Or
Yeah.
is this some shit that has nothing to do with him, but it's being activated? And now I need to kind of get to the root cause of it.
Yeah, and sometimes I play around with those triggers a little bit, and I'm like, "Am I triggering you, babe? Like, is this a trigger?"
You
And then, but I
know.
think that that's also a way to get past it a little bit too, where it's
Yeah.
like, because it's like, "Is this a trigger for you, babe? Are we talking about something that's a trigger?" And you're like, "Yeah," but
Well,
then
I'll
we
tell
laugh
you right
about it,
away.
right? We laugh about it
Yeah, it's
afterwards.
never like it's never malicious. It's always just like it's becoming aware of each other.
Yeah,
Right? Like how can you be a good partner if you don't even know like what turns your partner on or off, or like, what how to talk to them, or how to approach them, or I know that whenever I'm just like overwhelmed, I'm like, babe, can you just hug me? I just be real needy, and
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
how I relax. I need the heart to heart connection and slow down for a little bit, let my mind stop racing.
Yes, she does. Yes,
And
she
that's
does.
it. I mean, like,
Yes,
I
she
need a
does.
hug
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Low key, that's really how it is.
Get over here.
Oh shit. That cougar energy is real, folks.
I love you.
Oh shit, that's good.
But yeah, I think health conflict does not have to mean
A battle.
anger, raised voices, combativeness. It's just a difference
Conversation.
it's two human beings who have completely different philosophies, thought patterns, experiences, traumas, triggers
Towards one topic.
or just in general, right? Like we have two individual stories, we have two individual mindsets, and healthy conflict is figuring out how to balance those things so that we can interact in a good way.
Right.
And that takes time, and
Right.
that takes practice.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, that's so true. Being best friends is the thing, because it's best friends can have beliefs in different things, but
Yeah.
still fuck with each other and still have each other's back and full 100% support regardless of what aisle they're on or whatever. So.
Yeah. And I think it's something that never ends, honestly. That like that work never ends, because if you think about, a lifetime long relationship where you're together 30, 40 years, whatever, the amount of things that you're going to confront, it's just like you don't even know, right? You don't even know what's waiting for you. There's going to be illness and family loss and like maybe financial issues or career problems or whatever. There's so many things that can happen, but when you have those fundamental skills of just being able to handle life when shit happens, I think that's what makes or breaks like those couples, like those the couples from like the Notebook type thing, versus people that once shit gets hard, it's just like you give up because you don't have that skill set to navigate the not so great times.
Yeah, and people change over time. In my 20s, I have really lived a couple of different lives, and I've really kind of found who I am up until this point. And I know that it's going to change a lot in the next decade and so on and so forth. And two people that are together, people that get together in high school and stuff like that, and they make it through and they end up being together all the way until way later on in life, you really have to take your hats off to those people, because they've changed so much just as individuals. They've
grown together.
Yeah, they used to like something and now they don't. All kinds of crazy things go on, all while still being in a relationship that's changing as well too. That's I really commend that, because if I had a son or something like that, I would try to tell him to like try to find yourself throughout your 20s. Don't really worry about getting in a relationship and trying to live this like adult life, because you're in such a rush to grow up. So it's like real appealing to like find a wife and like have a kid and like have this life, but you don't really get to have fun in your 20s. You don't get to go travel and party and do whatever the hell you want to do and figure out who you are. Living life, that's how you figure out who you are and the type of person you want to be. And I think that I would always suggest for people to like, doesn't mean go out and be a hoe, but I think just live your life for you. Don't be in such a rush to find someone to live your life for, because when you make that commitment, you find someone that you quote unquote want to live your life for. That's not just some glamorous fucking statement that's like, oh yeah, I'm living my life for this person. No, bro, like you're actually really doing that shit. You got to stay in the hospital with them and sleep on that uncomfortable chair if they're in there for something. Like there's a lot of shit that goes into it. So there's
like
my raised
advice,
rant. There's my raised rant.
No, I like that advice, honestly, because it's like, how do you even know what you want from a partner if you don't have enough life experience to know what you demand of yourself?
Hell yeah.
Right? Like if you don't even know who you are and what's important to you, what the
Yeah.
hell are your values? Like how are you going to even know what to look for?
Yeah.
And that only comes with time and exposure. So yeah, I'm here for it.
I love this.
I love you.
I love you.
Well, this is fun, y'all. So I think we're gonna wrap it up, right?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, guys. Well, listen, thank you guys so much. Please, take a second, go watch the video on YouTube. I know that listening to it, I listen to podcasts 90% of the time, but the video thing is going to be fun. We're actually playing around with some ideas for the studio set too. So super excited about that. But go check us out on all the platforms. Please DM us with any questions or topics that you want us to tackle if you want our input on those things. Yeah, thank you guys so much. We will catch you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
Peace.